This is a short video to discuss the parts of an essay. So the first thing you need to do as you're writing your essay is to make sure that you have your paper in Mla format. And for Mla format, you're going to have a header, last name, page number, and then you're going to have a heading with the student's name, the instructor's name, the course name, the due date. There's absolutely no gap, no blank space between the due date and the title. And then there's no blank line between the title and the beginning of an essay. And of course, with every paragraph that you write, you should have one indentation before you begin your paper. All of this should be reviewed from English 1101. And if you need extra help, don't forget you can go back into the Start Here section, and there are videos to help you kind of review some of those skills that you need to make sure you're bringing over from 1101 to 1102. Now, if you think back to 1101, and as you looked at building a strong 5-paragraph essay, the first thing we look at is our introduction. Typically, the very first sentence, sometimes the first couple of sentences in an essay, in an introduction, are going to have, your hook. So as you're analyzing literature, sometimes your hooks are not as flashy and wonderful as you were able to kind of brainstorm and create in 1101. But here you have someone who has written, selfishness is a breeding ground for selfish actions. And that is their attempt at a hook, because if nothing else, it makes you stop and pause and go, is it? Does selfishness breed selfish actions? How does that apply to my own life? Then as you keep going through a literary analysis, once you've passed the hook, you're going to move into what we kind of call the background information. And this is any information that the reader needs to know in order to make sense of what you're about to analyze. For almost everyone, you're going to find that giving a short summary of the text is very helpful here. But when you think about a reader reading your paper, from kind of blank knowledge, nothing coming into it, they of course have to have the title of the text you're analyzing. And this person did that right here in sentence 2. The Tempest, we immediately know, is what we're analyzing. We also need to know the author's name, because not all texts are going to immediately have an author you connect to. Now, the person put Shakespeare's name here, but it would be acceptable to write a little bit about the author William Shakespeare in this beginning piece so that the reader of your essay is aware of who wrote this, what happened in their life that may apply, the short synopsis and summary so that they kind of know what happened in the story. And then, like we discussed in 1101, your first paragraph will end with your 3-part thesis. And I'm going to go ahead and underline that so we can see it. But from this one sentence, we know everything that's being talked about in the essay. Of course, it's very quick. It doesn't go into great detail because you're going to have body paragraphs that follow this where you can really break apart the message. But you can see where this author created a thesis of Shakespeare's trying to teach mankind that although power breeds selfishness, it must never control a person's action, which is shown through the characters of King Alonso, Antonio, and Prospero. And here's what this thesis does. First of all, the message that they're going to be writing about and analyzing over and over again is this. Power breeds selfishness, but it can never control a person's actions. There is a theme of the text. That's what the person is going to write about through the entire paper. But they stop and they go, where in this play do we see this? How can I break it up into 3 easier pieces for my reader to understand? And that's what we see here. King Alonso, Antonio, and Prospero. And so we know immediately that paragraph 2 is all going to be about King Alonso and how through that character we see power breeding selfishness, but we should not do that in our own lives. Paragraph 3 is going to be all about Antonio and how power breeds selfishness, but we should never let that control our actions in our own life. And if you think about the story, you can realize Alonso and Antonio are examples of what not to do. And then last, in paragraph 4, we're going to be discussing Prospero and how power breeds selfishness, but it must never control a person's actions. And when you think back to the story, Prospero is an example of someone who he was on the wrong path, and then he realized his mistake and changed. He is our hope. He's who we should model our own lives after. He was once selfish and was, by the end of the story, keeping that selfishness from controlling his actions. Next, when you get into body paragraphs, remember that your thesis is controlling what your body paragraphs are about. If you find yourself writing something in this paragraph that is not reflected in the thesis, something is awry, which means you either need to change your body paragraph or you need to change your thesis, but they should always be connected. The very first sentence is your topic sentence. It is going to outline exactly what this paragraph is about. And because it's connected to your thesis, it is a mini piece of your thesis. So first, we see that King Alonso dangerously let his selfishness consume him instead of using his power to help others. You see how that connects directly to the message in the thesis. And it clearly states which character we're going to talk about for all of paragraph 2. That is a topic sentence doing its job well. What follows your topic sentence is your supporting details. And that is everything in the paragraph except for the last sentence. So if you don't mind, I'm going to flip from, we just did our topic sentence. I'm going to skip over the supporting details for a moment, and I want to look at our concluding sentence. And our concluding sentence does exactly what it says in the title. It concludes the paragraph, which means it is going to sum it up. And you're going to see where your concluding sentence and your topic sentence mirror each other. They're basically the same sentence. They're just rephrased to not be repetitive. So this person created, to sum up, Alonso's actions throughout the Tempest were not those that a king in a position of power should have been displaying. And so you can see how it's summing up the paragraph. It's reminding the reader King Alonso is a bad example. He was selfish, and instead he should have used his powers for good. So if you know a body paragraph starts with a topic sentence and ends with a concluding sentence, everything in between is your supporting details. And as you look through this body paragraph, there's going to have to be moments between your topic sentence and your quote. You can't just go one right after the other. But this author created, Alonso decided that he did not care if he died like he suspected his son had died. Just enough of the plot to remind you what you should already know. And then we move directly into our direct quote. We introduce it, therefore he uttered, and he is okay here because we know exactly who we're talking about. But if in doubt, we can always change it and say, therefore King Alonso uttered. And we have the direct quote from the play. I feel the best is past. And you have already been given notes about how to use an in-text citation for a play from William Shakespeare, but go back and look and make sure you feel comfortable with this. I'm going to turn this direct quote red so you can see just how small it is. Because what it does is it gives you the jumping off point to then analyze. You have this quote. It was picked with purpose so that you can go back through and you can explain exactly what it means and exactly how it explains your thesis, your message you're wanting people to realize. As you start creating sophisticated papers, your quotes should be small, your explanations should be detailed. Because as an instructor, I care more about what you're seeing and how you explain it than I do what you have read in the story. So always remember, direct quotes should be small, they should be specific, they should be to the point. Your explanations of those quotes should be detailed and thorough so that the reader understands as well as you do. And again, we have another quote. We start off by introducing it. Next, he wept saying, and again, he is okay because we know it's King Alonso. That's what this paragraph is about. We have our direct quote, and this one's a little longer, but still serving its purpose of giving us specific information we need from a play so that we can then analyze, describe, and explain why it is so significant. The last thing that makes body paragraphs successful is the use of transition words. And it's easy to kind of throw a transition word in a topic sentence and call it a day. But when you look at what a transition word is supposed to do, it's there to transition from one complex idea to the other. So this author used a transition word here because they are transitioning between that complex thesis to the first body paragraph. And that sometimes is complicated for readers to kind of follow along. But again, we've got another transitional phrase right here. And it's signaling to you, hey, look, I'm about to transition from my own words to King Alonso's words from the play. And again, we've got a transitional phrase here, signaling to the reader, I'm moving from my own thoughts and words to a direct quote, to something someone else said. And then last, this person used transition words to signal to you that they were concluding the paragraph and summing things up. Not all body paragraphs will have this many transition words, but as you are analyzing things and your topic is getting complicated, transition words are meant to be there to help the ease of the reader, because it doesn't matter what you've said if by the end of the paragraph the reader is confused and lost. Your purpose is to explain your great ideas so that they then can understand it as well. Now, paragraphs 3 and 4 will follow the exact same pattern. You're going topic sentence, then you're moving into supporting details. You're going to have quotes and explain quotes. You're going to finish it with a concluding sentence, and transition words will be sprinkled in between. As you get to your concluding paragraph, and this is the one that's frustrating because you feel like you're starting to run out of steam, you are summarizing the entire paper, which seems redundant because you have already introduced it, you have already talked about it, and now you're having to summarize it again. But as you go through your concluding paragraph, you're hitting your main ideas one more time, which means you're going to end up having to address your thesis. And you can see here where the author of this essay actually broke the thesis into 2 sentences, which is perfectly fine. Then they move on to talk about each example that they used, King Alonso, then Antonio, and last Prospero. See how that's following that body paragraph order, to go over the major examples that prove their point, each one its own sentence. And then last, you're looking for some way to kind of bring back the idea of your hook so that you're beginning and ending your essay on the same idea. And as you do that, you bring in that idea of selfishness being a breeding ground, but we don't actually have to do it. We leave light at the end of the tunnel to let people know, we don't have to be like King Alonso and Antonio. Instead, we can choose to model our life after Prospero, and we have hope for mankind. And with any paper that is going to have in-text citations, you have to have a works cited page. Your works cited should be titled and centered on the last blank page. You still have your header going with your last name and your page number. And then you're following the order of whatever source you cited. And for this paper, they were citing The Tempest by William Shakespeare. They used the No Fear Shakespeare website, and you can see that web address there. And then finally, they have their access date, so you know how current and relevant it actually is. So this was a short rundown of the parts of a literary analysis so that you could see what it is that you are supposed to be building as you create your essays in 1102.